The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to Grow Your Practice, pitching your bookkeeping services to your clients and prospective clients. My name is Marnie Stretch, and I'm today's presenter. If you run into any technical difficulties, please let us know in the question panel, and we'll do our best to address them. So this webinar comes to you from the south of France. I'm actually currently here with my fiance enjoying the sights, the food, and the culture. I'm trying to learn French, but he's actually from Quebec, so I'm cheating quite a lot. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the owner of Accounting Loft, and I provide financial system solutions and advisory services to other small businesses using QuickBooks exclusively, along with several apps. I've been working with QuickBooks for over 25 years, and I love both the desktop and the online platforms. I'm a part-time instructor at the Northern Institute of Technology in Edmonton, which is close to where I live in St. Albert, Alberta, and I'm also a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. I enjoy learning as much as I love teaching, and I always love to exchange ideas with the bookkeeping community. I am also fully remote and able to work from pretty much anywhere, which is how I'm able to be in France right now for a few weeks. I'm essentially a solopreneur, but I did hire a part-time contractor who helps me out tremendously. Slack has been an awesome communication tool for us, and I encourage you to check it out. So that's Slack, S-L-A-C-K, and they now integrate with QuickBooks Online, which is really nice. There's a beta test right now, and it'll be released shortly. So today I'm going to be talking about pitching your bookkeeping skills. I like to call it create, converse, convert. We'll take about 15 minutes for each topic and then leave some time for questions and answers at the end. I'll be checking the questions window throughout the presentation, so feel free to post your questions or comments while the webinar progresses. I love to engage during presentations and classes, and since everyone has been muted, this is the way that I'll connect with you throughout the webinar. So let's get started, and I'll tell you what I mean by create. Growing your business or your practice, no matter what size, starts with creating the right opportunities so you can have an abundant supply of the right prospects reaching out. For me, this has always started with knowledge. Knowledge is my home base, and everything is built for me on the rock of knowledge. Here's one of my favorite quotes from Eartha Kitt. I am learning all the time. The tombstone will be my diploma. Incidentally, you might recognize Eartha Kitt as Catwoman from Batman. And here's a random fact for you. I actually lived in California for many years, and I lived next door to and was friends with Robin's sister, you know, Batman and Robin, for over 10 years. So there's a random fact for you. So let's talk about a few ways to boost your knowledge. Oh, and thank you. Somebody says, ooh, I like that quote, which is great. I love it. I actually have it on my webpage, one of my favorites. So I mentioned that I teach at a community college. It's a polytechnic, actually. Community college is a great way. You're never too old to go back to school. They offer standalone classes, certification programs, but this can be a great way to boost your learning. There's also webinars available all the time. I'm a real collector of classes and whatnot, and I very much like to listen to webinars when I can. Oftentimes, too, if you can't attend a webinar, they'll send a recording after the fact, so sign up when you can if they're going to provide the recording. Intuit themselves offers several webinars. Obviously, you're on one today, but there are others, and I'm going to add some links in the chat window in just a second for these that I'm mentioning. So give me a sec here. I'm just going to jump into the chat window and we'll see if this will work. And hopefully everybody can see these links that I've posted in. So the first link is going to be for some additional Intuit webinars. Podcasts are another way that you can really add to your knowledge. There are several podcasts. Some of my favorites are The Art of Value. So the link is in there. The Art of Value is Kirk Bowman, and he talks about a lot about value pricing, which we'll get to in just a minute. There's also The Soul of Enterprise, which is Ed Kless and Ron Baker. They've got a lot of past programs that you can actually go through and listen to. They do a podcast every week. So there's tons of great things in the archives for you to access there. Books are another great source of learning. For those of you that might just be starting out, Michelle Long has a great book called How to Start a Home-Based Bookkeeping Business. I've put the link in there to the book on Amazon.ca. Of course, one of my favorite books is Ron Baker's Implementing Value Pricing. It's a great read. It's also available on Amazon. You might want to search if it's available somewhere else. There's other options. Sometimes the books are a little bit pricey, so you might be able to source them somewhere else. You might even check the Art of Value website. There could be a link there. Then another book that I like is Alan Weiss, Value-Based Fees. This is another book on value pricing that I just actually picked up a couple of years ago, thanks to a friend, and this has been a great value pricing book as well. So that's Alan Weiss, Value-Based Fees. For those of you that don't know, the IPBC is the Institute of Professional Bookkeepers of Canada, and I've been a member for several years. That's actually where I got my CPB designation, which is Certified Professional Bookkeeper. The IPBC offers a great forum. They have really rich webinars. They have an awesome annual conference. I've been every year. I think this will be the 6th year coming up in Calgary in the later summer. There's regional meetings, and then of course I mentioned the CPB designation. So it offers a great membership with a body of fellow bookkeepers and accountants with similar values and goals. So I'm a real fan of the IPBC. They're very close to my heart. There's lots of events that you can attend. You can attend networking events in your area, breakfasts. In Alberta, we have a really healthy networking community thanks to the efforts of my BDM, my Intuit Business Development Manager, by the name of Jeremy Burke. So they do a lot of networking and breakfasts. So look for events in your area through the Chamber of Commerce and those types of things. Not only bookkeeping and accounting events, but there might be events with an industry vertical that you're interested in. I cannot leave out conferences. I am somewhat of a conference junkie. I attend quite a few of them, and I do speak at some of them as well. So I'm going to start with QuickBooks Connect. Of course, there's the US version, which is in San Jose. That is an amazing conference. The first year I went, I was simply blown away. Tons of great learning, tons of networking, app partners, events, music, great food. That's a fantastic conference, and if you can get to the one in the United States, it's fantastic. There's lots of content that applies to Canada as well. A little closer to home would be QB Connect in Toronto. At least it has been in Toronto so far. This is later, like December-ish. It was November and December the last couple of years, but this is a smaller version of QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, but just as amazing. Then if you're looking for something more local, Intuit is starting to have some events called Get Connected. There was one in Vancouver in January, and there's another one being held in Calgary, and I believe that's at the end of May or near the end of May. And I think that they might have them in other cities. I'm not sure, I'm just guessing, but hopefully they'll roll them out across the country. Some other American conferences that are fantastic. One is called Scaling New Heights. See, Scaling New Heights is a QuickBooks-centric conference. So it's just QuickBooks and apps that integrate with QuickBooks. This is a big, fantastic conference with people from all over the world. Such great learning. The tracks are excellent. So that's called Scaling New Heights. It's in Atlanta this year. The other one I want to mention is Accountex. They are actually not QuickBooks-centric, but they are open to they're software agnostic. They were held in Boston last year. It's going to be in Boston again, which is a fantastic city. I'm not sure if any of you have been there, but it's one of my favorite cities that I've visited the last little while. And that's also another great conference. Lots of learning, tracks, apps, vendors, events, networking. So make sure that you at least check out one conference, if not a few. They're really good opportunities to bump up your learning. And then finally, I'm going to mention social media. And social media, oh, lost vocal. Hopefully I think that's Jacqueline. Hopefully, Jacqueline, you're okay. I don't see anybody else posting that they have problems. So let's hope that that works out. Back to social media. So Facebook groups such as QBHQ, there's also QBO in Quinty, if I'm saying that correctly, as well as LinkedIn groups. These are amazing places to go to your peers, to get support. You can learn a lot, you can lurk, you can ask questions, you can offer knowledge. But I find these an amazing way to sort of get the answers to the questions that we all seem to share in common. And before I go to the next class, or to the next slide, I'm just going to check the questions for a second here. So the webinar, I believe, is recorded. You will get an email afterwards. Kimmy, yes, it is an expensive book. That's why I was saying maybe look around. They are actually both expensive. Sometimes, like I know when Ron comes to the IPBC conferences, sometimes he has some of his books. I don't know how much they sell for. So there's probably some other links out there. I don't know that they're available at your local library, but I'm a big fan of my local library. I check out movies, music, books all the time, and you know what, they take suggestions. So you might even suggest that your local library get a copy and they might get it in. That said, I like to have that book accessible because I look at it quite often. So that's the nice thing about having it. But I will tell you that listening to Ron or reading anything from Ron, I find that so valuable. So yes, it's expensive, but it is so worth it in the end, in my opinion. Okay, and somebody else is saying that, okay, Kimmy, thank you for saying you can hear. And somebody else has lost audio too, MJ. So I apologize if you're having trouble. If you are, just please weigh in. I am in France, but hopefully it's every bit as good as if I was just there in Canada. And just one thing to wrap up this slide, as I always say to my students in my classes, it's vital in accounting and bookkeeping to know what you don't know. So part of that is, like I said, beefing up your knowledge as much as you can and learning to know what you don't know. Okay. So everyone's journey is a little bit different, and you really have to pick what works for you. And what I found for me is that you really have to plant the seeds. So it's no one thing that I necessarily do that creates opportunities or success for my business. Rather, it's sort of the net effects of all of the things that I do. Now, who likes to sell themselves? I certainly don't, and that's why I'm in accounting and not sales. My son, on the other hand, he's a great salesman. He loves it, he's great at it. Not really my strong suit. It's not easy, at least for me. And I was actually reading a thread in the IPBC forum about marketing, and one person's response about it really resonated with me. He said that it got easier when he started selling the services of his company rather than himself. So for me, because I was a solopreneur for so many years, everything was always me and I. So I would communicate in emails, me and I, my engagement letters, my agreements would all say me and I. But when I hired somebody, I started to say us and we, and make it sound like I have a team. And actually, that makes it so much easier for me to pitch my skills and talk about things and pitch options. So if that's appropriate for you, I totally recommend that approach. So some ideas for you, business cards. There's a great website where you can order really unique business cards and other types of printed materials called Moo, M-O-O. You could consider automobile branding. Back in the day, QuickBooks or Intuit actually used to send out with your ProAdvisor kit, like a sticker you could put on your car. So there was that, but you can actually go full out and do a whole like magnetic sticker for the side of your car. I know a lot of people have success with that. Brad, who rides a Vespa like I do, although we haven't ridden Vespas in France yet, but I do have one back in Alberta. He actually has a branded license plate, and I think it's CFO for you or something like that. So there's license plate branding as well. Showing up at networking events with those business cards. Getting yourself out there on social media, your website, of course. Word of mouth, so important. Wearing branded t-shirts. I know that there's a farmer's market in St. Albert where I live, and I have shown up there with a t-shirt and I've gotten business from that. So if you've got those branded t-shirts from Intuit or apps or anything like that, wear them. Wear them to farmer's market, wear them out there in the world, because people do ask and they're interested. Blogging is a great way. So sharing your content with other people, that's a great way to drive traffic to your website and drive traffic to your blog. And referrals, which I have in green, because referrals is one of the biggest sources of business. So that could be referrals from a current customer, that could be referrals from other accountants or other bookkeepers. Maybe you specialize in one area and somebody doesn't want to take that on, could be inventory or something like that. So referrals is definitely one big way to create opportunities. So really, you want to go for the net effect and realize that everyone you talk to is a potential customer. Okay, and thanks everybody for saying that you can hear okay. I'm happy to hear that. Okay. So let's talk for a minute about the Find an Accountant website. The Intuit Find an Accountant website is one of the very best ways to get leads. It's free, of course. So if you're a Cloud Pro advisor, you get a listing. And Intuit has just recently updated the Find an Accountant website. You can actually access your profile directly through your QBOA portal and work on it from there. So you can launch it and work on it from there. They've actually added the CPB designation, so you can check that off. So it actually shows up in your profile, which is a really nice shout out to IPBC, and shows the importance of that designation, Certified Professional Bookkeeper. The first 90 characters of the description of yourself or your business are very important, because those 90 characters are what shows up on the search results. So make sure that you take the time to sort of hook them off the top, as they like to say in advertising. So get something really solid for that first sentence. Then, of course, we want to ask for reviews. You can add a request to your email signature if you want to do it that way, or you can craft an email to your current customers asking for those reviews. That actually really figures in quite highly in terms of how high up you get listed on the Find an Accountant website. So do make sure that you're asking for some reviews. At least try and get one in there. The other thing you want to do is get your certification. So you can become QBO certified, you can become advanced certified. There's a desktop certification as well. So those certifications show up on your Find an Accountant profile. So if you do one thing after this webinar, I would recommend you go to your profile and shine it up and give it some love, because really it's a great source of leads. I get emails quite often from the Find an Accountant website. And I'm just looking at the question panel. Do you have an example of asking for reviews in the email signature? You know, Kathy, it could be something as simple as just in your signature asking, you know, we love and appreciate reviews. Here's the link. I've seen some people say, we would appreciate your 5-star review. If it's not, please let us know what we could be doing better. I don't have anything scripted per se, but I know that if you Google it, because I did this before, about creative ways for asking reviews, there's really great ways. If somebody says something to you in an email, such as, you know, oh, thank you so much, I really appreciate the fact that you're always willing to share your knowledge, then you can reply to them and say, hey, would you mind putting that as a review on my Find an Accountant profile? And oftentimes they would be quite happy to do so. Sometimes you do have to follow up with people. It's not always the easiest. Sometimes people will say they'll do it and then they don't follow through, so you kind of have to keep on top of them. But again, those reviews are so important. And anyone that's sort of getting reviews and you're not, they're bypassing you in the listing. So you want to make sure that you do get those if you can. My pleasure. Okay, and just going to pop out these questions. Carol says she handed out business cards when in Mexico as she was chatting with people from Canada, which is fantastic. I don't know how you came upon that conversation to be handing out your cards, but that's fantastic. You honestly never know when you're going to pick up some business. And QuickBooks, QBO, they're doing advertising on TV. People know what QuickBooks is, and a lot of people use QuickBooks. And people need help. Like, let's face it, somebody can't sit down and, you know, sign up for QBO and get it right. It's not that easy, right? When we get into things like GST and ITCs and payroll and all those kinds of things, people can really have trouble and really do need our help. Then I've got an FYI here from Cheryl. Find an accountant, need 25 or more QBO clients before you can have a profile. That's not my experience. My experience is as soon as you join the Cloud Pro Advisor program, you get a listing. So if you don't have a listing, Cheryl, I would reach out to technical support because you are listed when you become a Cloud Pro Advisor, is my understanding. If somebody else knows something differently, please feel free to weigh in because I have been mistaken more than once. Okay, finally, I'm going to talk about niche just for a second. The riches are in the niches, as they say. Positioning or finding your niche is focusing on a specific need or an industry, and it's definitely something you might want to consider. There's a saying that goes, if you market to everybody, you market to nobody. So you will find additional opportunities when you niche, and you can also create more opportunities for yourself. So let's just say you specialize in home builders. I know advisors that will attend industry-specific conferences to get their name out there. So they might sponsor a booth, they might show up with business cards, they might wear a t-shirt, but they're attending those industry-specific conferences. And with all the apps now in the marketplace, selecting a niche is going to help you to cut down on those you really need to focus on. Because let's face it, it's really become quite overwhelming. There's tons of apps. So if you want an inventory app, there's probably, you know, more than 5 inventory apps. Then if you want a nonprofit or a membership app, there's several of those. So imagine if we can cut down on the number of apps that we have to become sort of well-versed in or experts in. It really adds to how efficient you can become in your practice. So for example, again, the home builder example, you might want to get really comfortable with Knowify, which is Knowifi, which is a construction app. Customers like bookkeepers who closely fit their needs. And I will say about this too, I believe that you can command higher prices when you niche because you become an expert. And people will hear that. You will become known as the expert in home builders or whatever it is you choose, nonprofits or the cannabis industry, which is coming up quite quickly, wine vineyards in BC, if that's where you happen to live and like. So really something to think about. Okay, and Kathy, thanks. Kathy says she was listed right away when she joined the Cloud Pro Advisor program. So Cheryl, definitely check that out. If you're not showing up, something's going wrong. You definitely don't have to have 25. I know that for sure. So yeah, hopefully you'll find yourself there and you'll be able to you know, fill out your profile and get that going. And Stephen asks, I'm not a QuickBooks user. Can I join any of the associations you talk about? Stephen, absolutely. You can join the QuickBooks Pro Advisor, the Cloud Pro Advisor program for free. You get your own QBO account and you have a QBOA dashboard, QuickBooks Online Accountant dashboard. So that's actually a free program, which is fantastic. Desktop, there's a fee for the desktop to become a Desktop Pro Advisor, but that's because they provide you with a ton of software, all of it. It is the best value if you are using desktop or if you have desktop customers. The IPBC has a membership rate, different membership rates actually, and you can check it out on the link that I provided. Oh, I think I didn't put that in there. So I'm just going to add the IPBC email address to the chat window right now, so you can also check that out. Okay, let's move on to converse. We're going to talk about talking. So I changed the conversations I had when I started listening to Ron Baker and then became what's known as a black swan. So what's a black swan, you ask? It's a program created by the IPBC, which allows 5 or 6 bookkeepers to be coached by Ron for several months. In my case, it was close to a year. And Ron speaks and teaches, of course, on value pricing. Now, the number one thing I learned from Ron is that value pricing is not possible until you value and believe in yourself. For some of us, this is possibly quite easy, comes naturally. For others, this is the hardest step. But I believe it's the most critical because until you value yourself, you cannot communicate that value with others, and you won't attract customers that value you either. And for me, a lot of that confidence comes from knowledge, which is where we started. So I have that knowledge that gives me a huge boost in my level of confidence because I know the material. And I know what I don't know as well. And I've also learned that it's impossible to be an expert in every single app. So I've repositioned how I talk to people about that. So rather than professing that I'm an expert in Notify, for example, it becomes a research project. Oh, let me find out about that. So we know how to learn about apps. We know how the workflows go, and we're becoming more and more expert at that all the time. So I personally use the value pricing method. Value pricing is basically pricing the customer and not the service. I don't have an hourly rate, and customers are presented with 3 options before we start some of the work that I do, customized specifically for them. Some people choose to use the fixed fee method, which is like a third method, meaning there's a set rate for a certain level of service. But what I want to talk about really is relevant no matter how you're pricing. We need to change our conversations. So, first contact, usually an email or phone call. They say, how are you? I've got this business and this is my problem. Usually ends with, can you do this and what is your rate? So usually we are so excited to dive in and problem solve, right? I know myself when they're talking to me about a problem or outlaying it on email, I'm like, ooh, I can do that, I can fix that, and I'm so excited to jump in. But imagine changing the conversation, saying something like, we do things a bit differently. We charge by the project and we wouldn't dream of giving you a price without understanding the parameters of the project. I'm happy to spend some time on the phone talking about your business. So the power of language and confidence cannot be underestimated. So please don't follow the script that you see on this slide and getting stuck in this trap. We want to change things up, change the dynamic. Alan Weiss, in his book, Value-Based Fees, talks about establishing your unique value. And there's a link to that book that I left in the chat window. So these questions aren't questions we necessarily need to ask our customers, but it's valuable to know the answers and helps us to quote our prices. So why me means, are they talking to other people? Maybe one, maybe a lot. Do I possess any unique abilities to help them with their challenges? Have I been referred to by a trusted source? Do I have a reputation in the industry? Is it the right place and the right time for this connection? So that's the why me piece of that. Why now? What if they did nothing? Is there an urgency to the problem? And typically there usually is, right? When people are reaching out to us, they've usually got a problem that they can't overcome. That's my experience anyway. It's not very often that I work with somebody that says, I'm starting up a business in a week and I'd like to have everything in place before I do any business. That's pretty rare. It's usually more like they've tried for a year on their own and they realize how difficult it is. So again, why now? Are they desperate? Is there an implied urgency? You need to determine how great the urgency is. And often there's a strong possibility that the urgency and the need for resolution are greater than communicated. Sometimes people will kind of downplay the issues or they won't basically reveal everything. And it's really your job to ask the right kinds of questions to reveal that information. And finally, why in this manner? Why not internally? Why don't they do it themselves? Have they tried in the past and failed? Have they used other consultants and what was the result? Who else is involved? So you need to, again, either ask questions that help you establish your unique value, or you need to discuss those questions directly in some cases with them. So there's nothing wrong with saying, have you had another bookkeeper? What was your experience of that? But you need to come away understanding the answers to these 3 questions. Okay. So let's talk about changing up the conversations. Imagine asking these types of questions rather than diving right into the problem to solve. So, how do you define a successful relationship with a vendor? What do you expect from us? And if this is important to you, what do you consider acceptable response time and what do you consider exceptional response time? What keeps you up at night? What if you did nothing? Ed Kless has said this in a few presentations that I've seen him speak at. What if you did nothing? And that's actually an option, right? That's always an option on the table, is doing nothing about the problem or the challenges. I love this question from a fellow Black Swan. What are you accustomed to paying? So rather than asking them, oh, what's your budget? Lots of times they'll say, I have no idea. But you can reframe it a little bit and ask, what are you accustomed to paying? I really like the way that that's phrased. And then who is the next best alternative to our company for your needs? That tells you sort of who else they might be talking to. So then we've got some next level questions. A gentleman named Rick Hayes had these comments on one of the Facebook groups I belong to. He said, most questions I ask have nothing to do with bookkeeping. The answers then generate more questions. The idea is to learn more about the emotional attachment of the business owner and his or her challenges. So you want to get creative. And this doesn't necessarily have to be done on a call. You can create a questionnaire and send it out to the prospective customer. And this is a great opportunity to see how responsive and thorough they are or aren't, and if their answers align with your company. So what excites you about your business? What did you like about your last bookkeeper? What did you not like about your last bookkeeper? I love this one. If I could wave a magic wand, what problem would you want me to make disappear? Here's a great question, and this really gets people talking because of course they're excited, or were excited at one point, about their business. Why did you start this business? And where do you envision your business in 5 years, 10 years, you could say 15 years? So this is really taking things to the next level. So now instead of somebody asking us, oh, I'm really having a challenge with GST, can you help? And me saying, oh, definitely, my rate is X amount per hour and I can start tomorrow. We're really asking deeper questions so that we're setting out on the right path of a partnership or a relationship. Because really, we're knowledge workers, like Ron Baker says. What we want to do is arouse emotions. Value pricing is an art, and I've come to know it's a journey, definitely a journey and not a destination. We want to leave customers convinced that they really want to work with us. Again, this isn't always easy because we're not natural salespeople typically. But you can always get closer to this by looking at and learning from masters like Ed Kless and Ron Baker. One other tip I can give you about the whole onboarding process is to slow it down. So take your time to qualify and onboard a customer. Make sure that there's somebody that you really want to work with. In the past, it was really easy for me. I would basically jump at anyone that asked me if I was available to help them with their QuickBooks. But hopefully you get busy enough that you can become more picky and choosy about who you'd like to work with. So no matter which pricing method you're using, take your time to have great conversations with customers. And if you're interested in learning more about value pricing, I'm going to add a link to the chat window, and you'll have to bear with me because I have to type it out. But this is a series of videos from Ron Baker that Intuit did about value pricing. So let me just put it in the window here. And I would love it if somebody could just test that link out and tell me if it in fact works. So I've just put that link in the window. All right, let's talk about the practical side of converting a prospect to a customer. So this is my process. It starts with what we call the value conversation. I just briefly talked about that. And this process itself helps weed out undesirable customers. We're teaching them how to have a partnership with us. I then present 3 options via Zoom, typically. So Zoom is a remote screen sharing, or kind of like Skype video chat, which is where I present my 3 options. You want to make sure that you get on the phone at least with them. Don't ever just send the options by email and leave them to their own devices to decode it and understand it. You always want to do a presentation, and even better is in person, but at least on the phone via Zoom is fantastic as well. I then take whatever option that they've chosen and I create an agreement along with an engagement letter in an app called Practice Ignition. If you haven't checked out Practice Ignition, it's a great customer onboarding engagement letter agreement app software available, which I use. There are some others. There's 17 Hats, Better Proposals are some. Proposify, I think, is another one. Practice Ignition is the one I use, and it's been a lifesaver. I love working with Practice Ignition. My engagement letters are typically, or my agreements are typically 12 months with an annual review, and I do have something in my agreement letters about an annual bump in the price. I think it's like maybe 4 or 5%. My annual review gives them the opportunity to check in. We want to have an annual meeting, talk about what's going well, what might not be going well, but just that opportunity to check in. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. And again, this is a great time to ask for a review. Finally, I set up recurring payments with Pluto. So I'm paid on the 1st of the month before the month begins. This is how I've set up my practice. I cannot tell you what a lifesaver this is. Not chasing down payments or invoices. Being paid up front is really quite a game changer in terms of your own practice. And I love not tracking my time. It was always hard for me. I was never good at it. I wrote it on stickies and on OneNote and an email to myself and everywhere. And inevitably, I would never overcharge people for my time. I would be undercharging. So by value pricing, I've removed tracking my time completely, which is fantastic. And you know, in this day and age of jumping from one QBO account to another or one app to another, it's really harder to track our time. It just seems so tedious. Payment apps, by the way, I use Pluto. There's also Rotessa and WayPay that you could use for that. Pluto's fantastic. It's a pre-authorized debit plan that they sign and set, and then we can all forget about it. I have a couple questions here. What Zoom package do you subscribe to? I do have the paid version. I use Acuity scheduling in my practice, and my Acuity and my Zoom, everything kind of works together. So I pay for Acuity and I pay for Zoom. However, Zoom is actually free, and it offers a really good package free, because you can have, I think one-on-one, you can go as long as you want. So I could go like 2 hours. But if you're doing like a group call, let's just say you're coaching a team of 5 people or you're working with a team, I think 45 minutes or 1 hour is the max that you can be more than one-on-one. So I had the need to be one on several, because I do quite a bit of coaching via Zoom. So that's why I have the paid subscription, but the free subscription is fantastic. And by the way, a new app I've just learned about is called Loom. That's Loom. You can record little videos. Practice Ignition is actually who told me about this, Tom Maxwell. And you can record just a little, 20 seconds saying, hey, I just want to let you know I sent your agreement, and let me know if you have any questions. So it's a really kind of cool way to get the information over to your customer. Cheryl asks, can you do your 3 options in Practice Ignition, or can you only do one? I don't do my options, and sorry, I should have mentioned that, and it's actually on my notes for this slide, in fact. So my options, I started doing them in Word. So I kind of got creative. I did 3 columns. I did like the contrasting colors, like light blue, dark blue. Then I kind of got away from that, and I started actually using Google Forms. So I present my options on Google Forms. So what I'll do is I'll schedule a call with a customer. Let's just say it's 2 o'clock. And right before the call, I'll send them a link to the Google Forms, and then we'll go over it together via Zoom. So that's how I like to do it. Google Forms is actually really, really cool, and you can use that for questionnaires or all sorts of different uses. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about briefly is phases. So I work in different phases. This might not work for you, but I wanted to share with you how I like to do things. When somebody comes to me with either QuickBooks Desktop or QBO, oftentimes I want to start with a review. And for me, the review lets me kind of look under the hood, lets me evaluate currently what's in the file, lets me evaluate the scope of the work, and really whether or not this is someone I want to keep working with. So was it hard for them to get the file to me if it's QuickBooks Desktop? Is it hard for them to invite me to the QBO file? Did they get me the trial balance? Those kinds of things, right? And you're talking to them and conversing to them. I charge a flat rate for the QuickBooks review. Then what I like to do is implementation or cleanup. I also like the term rescue work. So typically I will also quote, I might or might not quote a flat rate for the implementation or cleanup. It really just depends. After the implementation or cleanup phase, then we move on to ongoing bookkeeping. And I for sure here offer 3 options. So the QuickBooks review, flat rate, implementation cleanup, maybe flat rate and maybe options. Ongoing support and ongoing bookkeeping, is definitely 3 options. And then I also offer support and coaching. And that can look like different things too. You can use different differentiators. You could offer a support plan, a flat $149 a month, and anytime emails or Slack support if you're using Slack. So I really like this idea of offering a support plan for email questions. Because if you're going to call technical support lots of times for other software, you're going to be paying money. So when somebody comes to know you and maybe you've coach them and they have their own in-house bookkeeper and you just want to provide support, this is a really great way to keep working with them, and also to make sure that the cleanup that you've done stays clean, because otherwise sometimes it can get messy again really quickly. So let me just pop back to the questions for a minute. So can you share what you charge for your flat rate for your QB review? Carol, I charge more than you do. My reviews basically start at $350. They go all the way up to, I would say they could go up to $1,000. It depends what the issues are. You want to ask some questions so that you kind of understand what you're getting into. Are they dealing with multi-currency? Are they dealing with inventory? Do they have payroll in the file? So those things, inventory, payroll, multi-currency, kind of raises the price for me. And really it just depends how in detail your review is. Me personally, I have a problem with being not detailed. I can go down rabbit holes really quickly and I can spend more time than I should. So I'm really quite thorough. I've worked up a review template for myself that I use, whether it's QBO or desktop. So you just kind of have to go. But here's the thing, you can always charge more the next time. And you get more comfortable with what value you're providing to them. And what I say is the review is valuable whether they continue to work with you or not, because now they have a list of things that they know that need to be addressed in the file. And the review is not instructions on how to fix, it's recommendations on what needs to be fixed, right? Because we can also go down a rabbit hole there, trying to outline, okay, you do this, that, and the other thing to fix your AP or whatever. That's not really what it's about. It's just saying, you know what, you've got some unapplied credits in your AP that need to be addressed. And, Carol, you mentioned the word discovery session. I like that too. I like working in discovery session into these phases as well, for sure. And support coaching, that could be whatever price you want, $79 a month, $149 a month. It kind of really just depends. So, and even this, you could offer 3 options. So for, $79 a month, it's email questions only. For $149, it's email and a private Slack channel. And for $249, we'll do a 1-hour Zoom call a month plus, Slack channel or whatever it is. So you can really get creative with how you design this, but really it's an easy way for them to access. Now you might want to put a disclaimer about, any work that, anytime I have to jump in the file and actually do work, then I'm going to, there's going to be a price for that. But if I just need to jump in the file and just show you quickly how to do something, no problem. Or I can do like a Loom video and show you how to do something, no problem. So get creative with those things. Okay, I'm going to jump back. I know there's a few more questions and we'll see if I can get to them at the end. So those are the phases that I like to use. And again, your business, you can outline it how you need to. So in terms of adding value or doing more for our customer, we really have to think outside the box, because lots of times we think, I'm already doing it all for them. What more could I possibly do? I had this situation recently with a customer where I really had to get creative about, what things could I add to the other packages that they might like, or that acts as an anchor. Because remember, part of providing those 3 packages gives you that opportunity to provide that highest price as the anchor, and the lower price with, a starting point, and then that middle price. But that high price is really an anchor, and so you have to price it accordingly. So here's some opportunities for things you might want to have in your highest package, or for value adds. So you might offer budgeting, forecasting, or benchmarking. There's lots of apps that are currently helping with this. So there's Live Plan, there's Spotlight, there's Fathom, which is part of the app masterclass, by the way. So there's Dry Run is another new one. They're based in Alberta, I believe. So there's many apps that can help you with that benchmarking and have a dashboard. And some of my customers are really interested in those numbers and the ratios and the KPIs. So that gives them some really good information. Payroll and time tracking is something that can be added. Time tracking, they might be doing it the old way, and it might take a lot of time. You could introduce them to something called T-Sheets, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Intuit has recently acquired T-Sheets. They are the gold standard for customer support. So all you really need to do is kind of make the introduction, and T-Sheets will even talk to your customer and let them know the benefits of that. So that's another way of kind of thinking outside the box. Of course, we're always on the hunt for new app integrations. They're coming out all the time. Facebook groups like QBHQ are a great way to learn about those new apps. But if we're always researching and on the lookout for new apps, that's another way. Annual reviews, another great thing that you can add. So a complete review with the business owner of their profit, loss, and balance sheet. Audit protection is another one that I'll offer. In usually my highest package, I will say, if I'm doing the bookkeeping and if I'm doing the GST and payroll myself, for example, if our company is doing it, then I will say, audit protection is included for all the payroll and GST since 2017, or whatever, however long you've been looking after it. So I will offer that. So if we do have an audit, I'm not going to charge them extra. It's included because they've subscribed to the package that includes that. Here's another one that I recently added. It's based on a document that Eileen Reppenhagen has available. It's called How to Walk in Their Shoes. And I don't know the link to it. I will write the name of the document and you can look it up. How to Walk in Their Shoes. I believe it's something like this, and I'll put Eileen's name. But what it is I think it's like a 25 or 27 page document, and it asks for things like all the bank accounts, all your assets, your life insurance policies, where your valuables are, who you want to be notified in case of emergency. So it's kind of like this estate assist, but this is something I have been recently putting in my higher packages. I actually just did this for my parents. My mom actually passed away a couple of years ago, but I had put this together so that when she passed away, I knew a lot of the answers to these things. I knew her accounts, I knew her passwords, I knew who she wanted me to call. So this is a really nice thing that you wouldn't normally think of necessarily with bookkeeping and accounting, but super, super valuable. We had a regional IPBC meeting a couple weeks ago, and somebody was saying that they offer something similar to this and they charge several $1,000s to do this. So this is quite valuable. Check out that document that I added in the chat. She either sells it for quite a low price or even might provide it for free, but this is a great resource as well. So one thing, I love agreements and engagement letters because I can always look back and see what level of service a customer has signed on for. You don't want to be delivering gold service at a bronze price. So this allows me to look back and see what I've promised them and if it's out of scope. And if it's out of scope, it's as simple as, it sounds simple, it's really not, but no problem, I'd be happy to take care of that for you. Let me send you a quote when we're off the phone. Now, we're all working on something in our practice. Scope creep is probably one that I need to work on quite a bit more, but I am getting better at it, right? Progress, not perfection. So as my yoga teacher tells us every class, it's your practice. Don't compare yourselves to others and create your business your way. If you want to work 4 days a week, then do it. If you want payment up front, lose the customers that don't. And if you want to work from France for 3 weeks, you can do that too. Okay, so it looks like we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to jump back into the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have in the 10 minutes that we have remaining. So Donna asks about examples of my 3 options. So I spoke briefly about sort of support options, but you know, I've gotten away from, you know, you do it and I do it. So, you know, in the lowest package, then you're going to, let's just say, publish the documents from HubDoc into QBO, because I've kind of found that I want to be in charge of that stuff. So even with something as simple as bank feeds, Donna, I will actually put on my proposal, we will manage bank feeds, or if you prefer to do it, we'll coach you how to do it, so that they know that if they do it or if I do it, it's the same price. So they might as well let me do it, right? Because I kind of want to have control over those things. So I've had to get a bit more creative about what's in my packages. So I just talked to you kind of about that, like audit protection and those kinds of things. It does take time, I'm going to be honest. I've been on this journey for several years of value pricing. I get better at it all the time. If I do project work, which by the way, I love project work, I have a much harder time value pricing ongoing bookkeeping services than I do projects. I love value pricing projects because you can offer support. That's a huge one, is support and coaching. So in the low package, I might do the cleanup and I might provide support, you know, through the end of, let's just say, March, okay? And then in my middle package, I might say I'm going to extend that support for a month. And in my highest package, I might say I'm going to extend it till the end of June, and I'm going to do another review for you at that time to make sure that the cleanup is sort of sticking. So support and coaching options in terms of project work. For bookkeeping, again, it's a little bit trickier. It can be response time, how quickly they want to hear back from you. But I always love hearing different differentiators. Here's a really good one. In the highest package, you get brownies delivered to your office every month, or those kinds of things. I mean, I'm kind of being silly, but you know, you get creative, because really the options are up to you and you can kind of create anything you want. What I try to avoid, because I think it's more fixed fee, and that's okay, but I do value pricing. I don't like to say, you know, 0 to 50 transactions is X amount and 51 to 99 transactions is X amount, because that's fixed fee. It's not really pricing the results or the outcome or the service. Then you're really kind of just pricing the volume, and I don't price on volume. So Stephen asks a really good question. Is there a course for QuickBooks either in class or online? Yes, absolutely, Stephen. If you look in that chat box, that first link that I provided, that will take you to a current list of Intuit webinars. So there's, you know, how to convert from QuickBooks Desktop to online. There's online coaching. Desktop classes are a little bit harder to come by. I teach them at a local college, for example. You can find information articles, but Intuit doesn't offer any formal desktop coaching. So definitely QBO, you can get coaching. Desktop, you kind of should look locally. I'm not sure where you're located, but you can probably Google, you know, QuickBooks Desktop classes. Abe, thanks for this question. Do you find yourself negotiating your price? I never negotiate my price. So I actually have, and I can't quote it off the top of my head, but I wrote down somebody's quote about this, about, you know, we never negotiate our price. It just leads to I can't remember what the quote is, and it's so good. I wish I had it right now, but I don't negotiate my price. If somebody finds your prices are too expensive, you can agree to remove some services. So don't lower your price, but you could pull out some services. Okay, well, we'll be in your books every other month and then instead of every month. That's just one off the top of my head. But no, never negotiate your price. Could you send us? Irina, I'm not sure. Could you send all links to the email? I don't have people's email addresses, and I don't think that they will. So if it's possible, if you can copy and paste them, maybe into a Word doc out of the chat, that would be the best way to do that. And yes, right on, Abe. So no, don't negotiate your price. Don't negotiate your services. You're a knowledge worker, and you deserve to be paid for your knowledge. And I will say this, I have worked very, very hard over the last 25 plus years to get the level of knowledge that I have. If I'm not working, I'm at a conference, I'm reading, I'm attending a course, I'm listening to a podcast. My mind's like a sponge for this information, and I have a lot of it. So I deserve to be compensated at a good rate for my knowledge, not for the hands on a clock ticking 1 hour and 2 hours, right? Because really, when we bill by the hour, it doesn't serve us to go any faster, and we do get faster. So I think it's an ideal time to switch to value pricing or consider it or read about it if you haven't yet. It's definitely been a game changer for my business. Okay, let me just review these questions. I feel like I might be missing some, so I apologize. And if I have missed your question, you can post it again at the bottom so I make sure that I see it. Okay, and the link does work, so thanks everybody. Review I went through, support coaching I went through. Oh yes, and Carol asked about a 2-hour discovery session. And again, Carol, Carol's not, I don't think she's on the call anymore, but I do try to avoid any mention of time. Sometimes in my coaching, in my projects, I will say, okay, 1 2-hour Zoom call a week. And I'm not, for a month, let's just say, so it's 4 coaching calls. And the reason I'll usually limit it to 2 hours, and I'll usually tell them this, is because people's brains turn off after about 2 hours, right? It's all you can kind of handle if you're getting coaching and you're working through specific things. 2 hours is kind of the max. And I'm happy to go 3 or 4, and I'll tell them that. But I schedule it for 2 just to make sure that everybody, is not overwhelmed by the knowledge. And somebody's getting redirected here. The US page and then it redirects to Canada, which doesn't have VP info on it. Kimmy, which link was that? I'm not sure which one I got wrong there, because I'll try to correct it. The Intuit value pricing one. Oh, that's okay to use the US site, because so that was a program that Ron did for Intuit US, I think. It wasn't US Canada. So he developed those videos. I believe there's 4 of them, and they're over an hour each. There's a ton of content there. And again, anything that you can get your hands on from Ron, I could listen to him over and over and over. He is totally my mentor. I look up to him so much. He's so smart. He has changed my business. So yeah, you're fine to go into that US site. I'm thinking it's working. You probably shouldn't have a problem there. Okay, and if you have any QBO specific questions, you'll have to reach out to tech support, because I can't answer those on this webinar. They're a little too technical, I think. Oh, and Kimmy says she's getting auto-directed. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I wish I could point you directly to that. But if you look up Ron Baker value pricing series Intuit, if you Google that, you should be able to find it. And it's really, he does 4 different series, I believe. And he's got documents all over Google, so all over the internet. So just Google Ron Baker and you'll get a wealth of information. So it's just about time. So I am going to say thank you very much to everybody and remind you about the next webinar, which is on March 27th, 2018. There's a registration link there that you can see on the slide. You'll also get an email. Thank you so much for attending. It was really my pleasure to share a little bit of my experience with you, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to attend. Don't forget to sign up for those upcoming webinars. The next one, as I said, March 27th. Merci and au revoir, everyone. Have a great Wednesday, and thanks again.